Advanced Health Education Center, AHEC in Houston, Texas, has been your continuing education partner since 1988. AHEC introduces SERT, Stackable Education for the Radiologic Technologist. Modality training in mammography, CT, bone densitometry, breast ultrasound, and so much more. With staffing shortage challenges that are getting worse, departments are getting creative and upskilling and supporting their staff technologists with modality training. AHEC provides webinar, in-person, and on-site corporate-style training options customized for your needs. Contact us today and let us know how we can help certify your team.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Radiology Roundup podcast with Melanie Hale. Today's guest is Brandon Smith. And if you are anywhere near imaging or radiation therapy, you have heard the name Brandon Smith. Brandon has worn so many hats and served the profession so passionately for the past many, many years. Brandon is currently on the board of directors with the American Society of Radiologic Technologists. He has been on the board of he's on the board of directors with the Texas Society of Radiologic Technologists. Member of both. He is currently running for president of American Society of Radiologic Technologists. By day, he is a senior clinical analyst with GE Healthcare Solutions Enterprise Imaging. And he has been a technologist since 2013. Brandon has his Bachelor of Radiologic Science from Midwestern State University, a Master's of Science from Midwestern State University, and an MBA from the University of Texas at Tyler. Brandon has served as adjunct faculty. He has been full time faculty in radiography programs. He has a background in special procedures, and he has worked here, there, and everywhere. But I usually see him, traveling through an airport or, inspiring others with his lectures at state conferences, national conferences, and the like. Brandon is a supporter. I don't know that I've ever heard him say no to anyone for anything or witnessed it because he is just a can do and go the extra mile for the profession person. He is so passionate about this as well. And it's a contagious passion that if you haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, you need to be sure that you do. It may be at your local meeting, local state meeting, but please be sure that you do. Brandon is a legacy technologist. His father was a technologist as well. So I'm just so grateful for him and his energy and that he is joining us today. Please help me welcome Brandon Smith.
Good afternoon, or good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you all for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm so glad that we could finally get together. We try and on the road all the time and or on email or text. I'm so glad we were able to grab a few minutes today.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm gonna start a little bit further back than where we usually are. Tell me, Brandon, tell our listeners. So before we kind of get to the current events that are happening,
hmm
tell me what brought you to radiography and where you started and why.
Oh man. So I am actually a second generation medical imaging professional. My dad's been in the field since the 1980s. He went to a hospital-based program. He retired and started doing contracts. So he's actually now on contract doing MR. And so, of course, that I didn't want to go into the profession because my dad did it, and I was going to do my own thing. And so, I went off to school. Had an engineering major. Got into last year of it, and was like, I don't feel invested. So everybody thought I was going crazy. I took a externship at Imaging Research Center in Atlanta, and then really started getting involved and decided, okay, I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna try it out. So, my dad was really confused. My family was really confused. Uh, I dove in since then, and that was kind of history. Like I loved it, and we actually he and I debate because I actually love it for two different reasons, and we're definitely in two different modalities, and so we debate about that. Um, but probably the most meaningful thing, and so it was an intentional choice. Wasn't the original avenue. Um, and so yeah, and I every day, I don't. I guess I would say sometimes, oh, maybe I should have went into it first. I don't know if I would have had the same understanding or appreciation
Right.
for it had I gone into it first. But I did go into it on purpose when I did go into it.
So good deal. So you're a legacy
Hmm.
radiographer. That is great. You're my second one. Chris Dawes was also a legacy radiographer that I had on my last show.
Chris is
So
awesome.
he is awesome. He is awesome. Y'all, you are both very awesome folks. And so you started engineering, thinking, okay, well, maybe this is calling me. Went back to that or went to it and discovered that it is a passion for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I get to it. Like I'm from Southeast Texas, Southwest Louisiana, and so down here, oil and gas and Friday night football, are king.
They sure
And
are.
so, it's all you're gonna do, go into oil and gas, and it's like so doing a chemical engineering thing, and like, and just get to a place like I'm not having fun.
Wow.
Like it's cool and it's great, lucrative, definitely lucrative. I don't know what it was. I, I don't know. I took a leap. Um, for me it went well. Everybody appreciates it now, claps for it, and it's like they're so proud of me. They did not feel that way
Hmm.
when I made the shift. I think my dad works so hard as a technologist from the '80s to now. I he and I often talk now about how our perspectives of the field are very different.
Hmm.
And so that was a big thing where I think he appreciated the work that he did. I think he felt probably he worked harder than he would have want me to. Well, he definitely won't work hard, but I don't know if he felt like the reward for the hard work was the same. And I may be over speaking for him, but he didn't discourage me going in, but it wasn't an encourage. It wasn't also like, hey, you should consider this because my brother actually tried to. My dad's like, I don't know, you want to choose something else, and then so we talk about that. Oh, we laugh and talk about that today. How funny the world works.
That is cool. That is cool. You're taking me back to some conversations with my daughter as well. Oh, and she's a nurse, but she actually wanted to be a therapist, and that's another conversation, another deep conversation.
Understood.
Yes, but yeah, she's a nurse, and we keep healthcare in the family quite a bit. So
Understood.
yeah,
Same here. Same here.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you finished your radiography program. You went into specials into vascular imaging, interventional. Was how was that like?
Oh man, so I'm the advocate I am today. I know everybody loves their modality, and I'm a big advocate too. Definitely have pride in the modality you're in, but make sure your purpose is driven with the whole profession. Um, Interventional taught me to appreciate other modalities. Interventional,
Really
it did. Interventional
interesting.
because it's not because interventional is multimodal in nature.
It
And
is.
so it allowed me to, you're doing fluoro, doing X-ray, and you're doing very basic sono. But then when we needed to go more advanced, like I had no issue in saying we need to call ultrasound here. We need to
Hmm.
call a specialist.
Hmm.
It allowed me to learn every the different roles, nuclear medicine when they came in, CT, MR, we're doing interventions, but through maturity, really allowed me to understand the importance of the whole team and how sometimes advocating something for something that doesn't directly benefit you still benefits you as a community.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we take that for granted. It may be maybe legislation in the map, like we had it in Texas. We had to fight for sonographers because when we switched over to the TMB, they had it where they needed an ART license.
Oh,
Well,
no.
all sonographers are not
Nope.
like not excuse me. They need a ART registry certification. All sonographers who are registered aren't registered through the ART.
That's right.
And so that license and that requirement in that license caused a hiccup. And so then we had to explain to them, okay, let's back up. Because we didn't have that problem. We didn't run into that dilemma because we had been under the Department of Health and Human Services for so long. And then we
Right?
switched to the TMB. So I say all that to say in a long winded way I can be verbose. Some our teammates say, well, I mean, it has nothing to do with me. That's unfortunate. But when it's happening in the neighborhood, it's happening to us. And so
Absolutely.
I really try
Absolutely.
to
We're
get
all
people
under
to
the umbrella.
understand.
Hmm.
Agree. And I think that's the important part, like to understand that, medical imaging is our noun, but our modality is an adjective, not the other way around. Because when we switch it the other way around, I think we become more siloed, and being in a silo hasn't served us well.
I agree with that. And we shouldn't, now more than ever, but I mean, be siloed. We need to be united,
Hmm.
all imaging as a whole. Imaging nurses, imaging technologists, sonographers, nuclear medicine technologists, therapists, everybody.
And
So,
it really is understanding your lane, and I say it, and I think some people say, "Oh yeah, I get it." It's like everybody has a job to do, and
right.
I think your first role in driving is understanding your scope of practice and what that looks like. Because sometimes we can't have fluent conversations if we don't understand that. Me being pro me is not me being anti you, and
Oh,
so
100%. 100%.
and that goes wrong. I'm not asking. I've never said in a meeting, and at this point, I've advocated on a local, state, national, international level. I've never said in a meeting about encroaching on another profession.
Sure.
Not from us to them, but I've said in plenty of meetings where we had
The other
to
way around.
respond. Right, we've had to respond and like, oh, I can do it too. It's like so I'm not saying you're not smart, you're not kind, you're not important.
Right.
But I'm saying you have a job to do. I have a job to do.
Sure.
Um, Let me celebrate your expertise, and hopefully you'll be willing to celebrate mine, and we can get the job done collaboratively. But
Collaboratively. Yes,
yeah,
that's something we, as all healthcare professionals, we need to realize that it is a collaborative effort,
mhm.
and there's not any one person more important than the other. So,
I would agree. Different degrees of liability. I'll tell anybody that, like, because I
oh, absolutely.
don't want to get into the unrealistic different degrees of liability, but like we're all here, and I think right now I'm seeing the profession probably the last couple of years be in a place to where I- I ask people to be unapologetically rad, like be unapologetic about your expertise. That I promise you that is not in discount to anybody else, but we don't have to ask for permissions and invitations for a room that we've earned equity in for at least
Yeah,
105 years.
absolutely.
Yep. I'm
Unapologetically. Yes, I like that very
unapologetically
much.
red. Yes, ma'am. So I will
Yes.
say that. I know people get tired of hearing me and my catchphrases, but
Oh no, I love
they
all
work.
your hashtags that you have on LinkedIn, and there are probably 90 to 100 of them. I love them, but and some of them, we all use, but then you've got some really interesting, unique zingers in there, like the unapologetically
Right,
rad. I see you, RT, and I've used
right,
that one just so
right.
you know I've taken that from you. So
Don't
yeah,
no word. That it's the things I do are to be shared. The one thing that I've matured in serving, you move from a position and you understand your purpose as a platform. Like at
sure,
this level, like that's my service. I owe it to that. I don't need to be cited. I don't even need to be remembered. But if I'm being effective, Like these things that are pushing us forward, nameless or not, are setting ideas on fire, setting people on fire, and that matters. I hear so many times like being patient centric. A person who does not see their own value can't be patient centric. And I could be wrong, and maybe a psychologist or a psychiatrist will correct me, but we want people to give ultimate patient care, but then they feel dismissed, they feel discounted, they don't qualify for PPE, at times, and have really been through some things. And so that's why I back up and say, in order for us to get to the center of patient care, we have to know where we fit.
100%. 100%. And know your value. I mean, discussing this with a previous guest, I don't know how many times over the years, and especially in the OR, I hear, the technologist, oh, I'm just the tech. I'm just the tech.
Mhm.
What does that mean? You are the technologist, the only one in the room.
Right.
Say it proudly. You're not the smartest person in the room. There may be one. Most people are not the smartest person in the room. They're probably fairly equal, and you don't have to be proud of who you are and what you bring to this scenario right now.
They
So
would tell you in the wrong room if you are the smartest person in the room. You're in the
I
wrong
know
room.
I'm not.
And so I feel the same way. Like I love to go in and to see the fireworks going off with neurons firing off with ideas and where to go. And I think we're in an era, and I could be being whimsical and optimistic, but we're reconditioning, we're reculturing. You're seeing this past um, Rad Week. Oh man, it was kind of rough for me. Like just seeing people post, seeing people proud of who they are, and not really waiting for somebody to clap. And I saw a lot more claps this year than not. And I've tried to myself be very intentional as somebody who's sometimes in focus is to be in the room unapologetically, not arrogantly, not dismissive toward anything else, but
Mhm.
understanding that we've earned a spot and we can articulate why, not because we say so, but because what our performance has been for our patients over 105 years. And I think that's important moving forward. We really have played well with others, even when they didn't play well with us. And I could tell you, buying into being patient centric, and I say it that way for a reason, not to discount patient care, but under the premise of patient care, we've justified, living on a healthcare team inequitably. We've justified that. Oh, it's all about the patient. It doesn't matter how I get treated. It's all about the patient. It doesn't matter with my scope. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And then you see a profession that's really beat down. And we're not alone. You see the
That's
same
right. That's
thing.
that's that shame talk. That's my therapist talking right there.
Right,
There's that
right,
shame talk. Don't
right.
be shameful. Don't be apologetic. Be unapologetic and be proud.
Proud.
Don't use that shame language. And we are all, you just hit a light bulb with me. We as technologists use that shame language as a whole. And I don't care if I'm, one part of the state or another part of the U.S., I hear that same
Right.
language. And as educators, where students start learning this, as technologists that students are around, and seasoned technologists, new technologists, we need to get away from that shame talking.
I see it shifting. I see it shifting. I don't think people understand how intimidating it is to go into a room, and I've said this to some of the adjacent professions that we've met with, to go into the room and convince people whose experience has been to be discounted that it's going to be okay, because sometimes people are looking for support, and so to walk in the room, and oftentimes they get people who look at me foolishly like Brandon is crazy. And it's on that
I get
laugh.
that look all the time. I'm
Right.
used to it, Brandon. Maybe it's cultural. Maybe it's
um,
Southeast Texas. I don't know.
so I know you walk in and I tell them, I said, look, y'all are awesome at what y'all do. I don't feel that way. You don't feel that way because you don't feel that way, or you've allowed somebody else to own your validation. And so then you start to see the wheels spinning, and it's like I'm not trying to psych you out. Let's really go step by step. You have imaging departments that sometimes more than half of the revenue they earn gets redistributed to other hospital departments to cover deficits. But yeah, we can't buy you a
Pay the
CT
salaries.
machine, right?
Uh-huh.
Can't buy you a CT machine. Then you
Yep.
have um, RTs, be it therapists, be it technologists, be it your mid-level RAs who went in the hospitals even when they told you you didn't qualify for PPE during the pandemic. The world was on fire. Okay, keep
Gosh, I
going.
remember
So
that.
you're going through all of this, yet from start to finish, from the time we organized in 1920 to today, you still showed up.
Still here.
You still showed up. And so understand in your resilience, there's value. And people will not, one, keep you around. You're not valuable. We can argue the technology versus the technologists. We can get into all of that. But even when we talk about encroachment into the service line, I've
Hmm.
never seen a worldwide breakout of robberies of Goodwills. Like somebody's just robbing all the Goodwills. You don't see that on the news. There's been a heist
No.
of the Goodwills. But banks and things. Well, people are robbing for value. And so, and it's not to villainize any professional persona or anything like that. But when we start talking about encroachment, people are not going to encroach on service lines that don't create value. And so, what I need professionals to step back and think about that, like to really think about that.
Interesting. Interesting.
Because if you told me right now, Randy, I got a house sitting empty. There's no appliances in there. There's no pipes, nothing. I'm gonna go in there and steal a sheetrock. But if you sit there and there's this pot of gold, this X marks the spot, not saying you're the only valuable thing, but there's value there. Because if there wasn't value there, why would people be so interested in being here if it was unworthy? And the moment I realized that, outside, like I said, being in IR, and IR like really changed what Oz looked like for me. You pull back the curtain, everybody's in the same room, and I worked at a level one trauma center, so it could get really enthusiastic. That's the word I'm gonna use.
Enthusiastic is a nice term to use in a level one trauma center. And I know the one you worked at. So enthusiastic is a great word to use.
It
Yes.
get really enthusiastic in there, but a lot of those egotistical barriers come
Of
down,
course.
and you learn like we all have a job to do.
Yep.
And you stop villainizing certain personas and start understanding. But then, really important, you find out what your real value is, what your scope is, things that exist that you have to test for, like on the ART task inventory that
Mm,
you're qualified to do. So becoming educationally prepared and clinically competent becomes a lot different
it
because
surely does. It
now
does.
you're moving like a clinician. But it also taught me to be a better radiographer because now my what I'm thinking about is completely different. H&Ps matter, medications matter, all these things that maybe in some realms or places I'm told I don't need to worry about, but they're not out of my scope.
Right.
And so it made me it brought me closer to actualization. And once I feel I became actualized for some crazy reason or another, I grew up very community family oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And so that says to me, if I'm the only person in the room that feels okay, then it's not okay. So how am I then telling the RTs that I came up with, the RTs that I work alongside, how am I helping to better educate, or at least, here we go, long bone, at least a 90-degree perspective of
Mm-hmm.
what you think about you and your profile. Because are we choosing to be deflated? And this is another thing, like because I'm
I think
sure.
some are. I mean, I'm just going to say that. I think some do choose to be deflated. I don't know if it's a path of least resistance mindset. I don't know what it is, but I think there are some technologists, why I don't really know,
I
that
think
choose just to be deflated and step away and be
I,
just the tech. I don't know.
I would argue for them and say some things that are improbable seem impossible, but they're not. They're not, and it's not an easy road. Like we are going
Oh, no.
politically. When I say politically, I just mean like influence hospital structure X, Y, and Z. So not to alarm anybody, I'm not talking red or blue, but just hierarchy of the hospital.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Um, it can be intimidating because you go into a room to make a plea, even if you're high enough to go into the room, and nobody in the room does what you do, but
Right.
everybody is interpreting or suggesting these grand ideas for your service line, but they don't have expertise there. And so, but because you don't have that type of representation or influence, I think that's changing and that's growing too, slowly but surely. But we don't have such a big share when it comes in decision making.
True that.
And so that then brings me to the question that I operate on today. Are we being intentional about how transferable our skill sets are? Because my career path, I can be who I am professionally because of the fundamental things I learned as an RT. I will never drop my RT.
Oh, never,
Will,
ever, ever
will never drop
retired,
my
win
RT.
the lottery, go to real estate. Never. I worked some of the hardest things I ever
Right.
did in my life. I'll never do it ever.
Right. And I agree. And so now we get to the places. Are we, have we, are we expanding the realm? Who are we outside the procedure room? And we're seeing that more and more. And are we talking about what, that the RT who started off in Houston ended up in space because they work for NASA because of their understanding of radiation or imaging using different modalities. The same thing when you talk about concepts and understanding things like what happens with the Little Mermaid under the sea, non-destructive testing. How does ultrasound, what does that look like with tomography? What is that? Just think, like all these things that are possibilities that I think we have at some point have collimated ourselves so much we don't dream big.
Ooh, well said.
And so,
Well
and it's just
said.
a time. I think the time is different. Like I met a student at an annual meeting this year, and he said that he was interested in imaging um, art, historic art, and being in museums. And I
Oh,
told him because I owe him an email today. I said I am going to find somebody, and I'm going to connect you with that person. And so I got a couple of leads, and I'm really hoping to close the loop on that because that's the type of out of box thinking I want to hear from students. It's not that it's not great when we hear from somebody who fell into it 30 years later, but sometimes I would hope we're being more intentional about paving roads and not just pioneering them. Something you can pioneer a road that's never paved, and so then it gets covered all up
it
again.
gets covered back up. Yeah.
So how are we showing people like this can very well be the way? If it seems outrageous today, that means that we're tapping into innovation and creativity. Like, let's go for it.
Yeah. 25 years ago, who would have seen fusion of imaging modalities like we do now?
Agreed.
I mean,
Agreed.
it's just, yeah.
And that's the lead to our next. That's how we lean into our next legacy. In my opinion, it's no longer about leading with the things we've been disappointed about historically. It's time to build. Like, I want to build a profession for you that I can't imagine. And so you have to tell me
That is
what the.
inspiring, Brandon, and that is a
Right.
challenge that we all need to step up and think about that.
I
And
see you coming.
what that would mean to me when I'm gone and when I can't get on a podcast or lecture in front of a group or talk to a group of students, what do I want to have left behind?
Right. I think
You
that
know?
has to be important. I think what lifelong advocacy, like you don't get that time back. Every time I think about this, like is a little invoking because when laying horizontal, nobody's gonna stand up at a podium and be like, "Oh, he's a ASRT past president." Like nobody's. I mean, not that they don't care about that, but it's not gonna mean the same thing to them as it did as for some of us. But what you want people to know is I left it different than what I found it. Seriously, in that I realized that it was more of a job than it was an accomplishment. I crack jokes all the time. I know people get so upset with me. It's not that I'm not being serious, but I'm like,
Not at all.
you can go to these trophy shops, you can print out medallions, plaques. I mean, really adorn your house, and can tell people you got all these accomplishments. You won't spend half the time, the money, and you can be if you really want to serve your achievements that much, because advocacy is not about what you get out of it, it's about what you can
What you
give.
put in it.
And
Yeah.
people don't understand it until they get like knee deep, and it's inconvenient. Your phone's blowing, because I try to be accessible. The phone is always blowing up, emails blowing. I've had to learn not to say no, but to say when, because there are times I have had 9 commitments at once, and I'm like, I just need y'all to work with me. We're gonna work this out.
I've
Because you
seen you. I've been at a meeting with you in Dallas, and then look on LinkedIn. Well, the next day you're in Chicago. Thinking he was just in Dallas with me a few hours ago. What?
no, it's go, but
Here to here to here. Yep.
it's been an investment, because a lot of it too. I think one of the misconception is, as a board member made a decision, some of the things I go to are me. It's not ASRT funded, but it's ASRT necessary. That's not a martyr. These are decisions I'm making, so that's not a pat on the back, nothing like that. Like, these are choices I'm making,
Sure.
or I've made, because at times there was places that need to be, and it wasn't a part of official schedule, and
Sure.
so nobody knows the difference in between that. People see posting and pictures and make their assumptions, and that's okay. Like, that's just how the world works.
Sure.
And but it's a job. It is a job, but it has changed my understanding of the profession. It's made me understand it as three parts: a profession, a business, and an organization. A business, because you got a lot of things that go, how do these things work? You have national organizations. What arises? Conflict of interest. You have people who have special interests, and with their special interests, they don't mean any harm, but this is where this causes a barrier. And so, how do we all move succinctly? Then you have an organization. The organization makes me laugh. The organization is, when I talk about ASRT in particular, is a business and a society. A
Sure.
business means that it's staffed,
Absolutely.
and then a society means that you have about 2,000 volunteers who make up the second section. Both of those have to be equally invested.
Hmm.
And so, when you talk about organization, what I am moving to impress people is, an organization is an entity. You cannot be upset about an entity. Oh, I hate the ASRT. I hate the TSRT. I hate AHEC. Like, that's not a person.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
It's a thing.
And so what
Hmm.
I ask people to do when I meet them is like, put a name. Like, I need you to put a name on it. Like, I
Right.
can't resolve, like, did Brandon do it? Because
Hmm.
Brandon is a representative of the entity.
Right.
And so what's more important is that we stop holding organizations accountable and start holding the people who organize it.
Right.
But, and that's, now this is where I become more of the villain. I love to laugh, and people say, well, what are you doing for me? I said, I'm happy to answer that question, and I owe
Oh,
you one.
I hate it when they say that. And I can hear these conversations at times. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you have a phone? Log on and see what they're doing for
I
you.
I love it, and I think that's, and I tell any board member that I've been able to work with, I was like, that's number one question. I said, you're not going to feel comfortable with what I'm about to say. I said, so don't jump into it if you're not ready but I love being in the midst of the fire pit, so it doesn't bother me. So my question is, I'm happy to answer that, but if you allow me to ask you one question first,
What would that be?
okay? Before I tell you what I do for you, can you tell me what you do for you?
I'm sure you've had some colorful answers to that question.
I have, and so, and the answer's like, well, that doesn't matter because I'm not I'm not running in a position. I said, no, I'm not telling you if you don't do it, I can. I'm asking, are you holding me more accountable for your well-being than you're holding yourself? And if I answer you and you're unaware that I'm doing it, if me being ineffective, is that because you're inaccessible or because I'm not doing it well? And so I said, all this is a conversation. Because if there's a, for instance, if there's a website where everything you're asking me is available to you, but you don't go there, am I not attracting you to it, or you're not willing to go there? So let's and then some people you meet to really want to have a conversation and they want to be heard.
Hmm.
I've run across people who I call it front porch politics. It just sounds good, and that's what we go to, the break room to talk about until you really meet a source of information and we can have real talks versus. And then you have people, and I know there's a lot of advocates that get burned on the hide. There will be individuals that have no intention on reconciling in a conversation. No, absolutely no intention.
That is true.
And but you, and here's the key to advocacy: you still have to serve each one of those personas with the same
Absolutely.
enthusiasm. Like I tell people all
Absolutely.
the time, I'm gonna work for you whether you clap for me or not.
Hmm.
Clapping it is the distraction, the same thing as booing. I put that in my statement this year. They were asking about accomplishments. Accomplishments really don't matter, but accomplishments tell me that I've made it, and so I don't need to do more. And failures tell me I can't make it. Both of those kill your hunger. Like and you can't get distracted. Now, mind you, there's value there, but
Sure.
they're not as terminal as we make them. Oh,
Right.
I made it. Cool. Oh, I didn't make it. So are we? Is it over? No, it's not over. This is a sequel. This is a sequel. Like
I
this is
like
more
that.
episodes, and so you go, and it's been a lot of maturity.
Uh, and if you're really willing to take that time to self-reflect and see what that's going to do for your future. I'm a lot older than you, Brandon. I'm all about being old and self-reflection and
Mm,
let's see what's around the bend now. What does God have in store for me now? I don't know.
right.
But, everything, a faculty that I had in x-ray school told me this a long time ago. Whatever it is you're involved in or doing right now is leading you to the next open door.
Right.
And it is going to serve you on the other side of that door, whether you realize it or not, professionally or personally. And I didn't know that till I continued to go from different places or different jobs or teaching different things or what have you. And that is so true.
Yeah, I think it has taught me. It's taught me how to see people. Like I mean, people working, because people working are
Mhm.
usually. It's like seeing somebody out of Scrubs. That's what I compare it to. Seeing somebody out of Scrubs.
You
You know,
have clothes?
you're right.
Oh,
Yeah, you wear regular clothes.
oh.
You learn when people are not okay.
Mhm.
You learn when they need their boost. You learn when they need a minute. Um, you learn that leading becomes more about seeing others and less about being seen. And that's why this campaign is so important. The Be Seen campaign, tell people all the time. I said, think about this. I tried something out maybe 2, 3 years ago. I posted all week for respiratory therapy week.
Mhm.
And so the president at the time reached out. It's just like, hey, saw a couple of posts, thought it was really neat. I know you sit on the board. What would make you do that? I said, we know how it feels to feel unappreciated.
Yes.
And so we know
Why
how it
wouldn't we do
feels
that?
from one
Yeah.
RT to another because we don't think about doing that. A lot of times we just think about we're distracted by our own dissatisfaction. And so it's hard for us to celebrate others because we don't feel celebrated. And sometimes it's not about being invited to the party, it's about throwing it. And I don't think we've been like just sometimes we haven't done that well. And sometimes nobody will show up. Sometimes everybody's gonna show up. But you gotta be willing to take that to not am I seeing being seen is important when it's being given, and in the essence of it being given, you'll find it's being you're receiving it. But the intent can't be to receive it because it's not going to serve you well. If your sole purpose of being seen is that you are being seen, it's going to be short fused
Mm.
because it either it's not going to be enough, it's not going to be the right people, not going to be the right setting. But when you see people in the room who have gotten on a microphone and described how you saw them and how they made an impact, then that's when you know that person, outside of being seen, is going to see the value in seeing somebody else. And then you see this exponential effect. You start to, I like to use nerd term, you start to ionize the room. Like you
That's
ionize
good.
the room. So either you're adding some positive, taking away something. So we get you. This is we're ionizing the room.
That is
Uh,
great.
and it's important, and it makes the precious thing that you're never gonna get back worth it, and that's time. Like you're the second that we spend at 2:50 on January 28, 2025 is never coming back.
No,
Even if we do the same time next year, it's still
right.
not the same moment.
No, it's
And
not.
I don't know. I can say I can be quirky. I can seem overly optimistic, which I don't think I'm overly optimistic. Most people who work with me would tell you
I
that.
think you're very optimistic. I wouldn't say
Um,
overly. I'd say you're refreshing, and you help me remind myself how important it is to be in the moment. I'm just really digesting that from what you're saying right now.
no, it's I live it. Because I think it sometimes I've gone through feeling defeated or feeling
Sure.
but sometimes things are a choice. It's like my grandfather, my dad's dad, would tell me. He said, it doesn't have to be your fault, but it is your problem. If it's something that's affecting you, how do you want to impact the solution? And so that didn't mean nothing to as a 14-year-old boy. It's like, okay, you just trying to tell me don't say something that's fair or unfair. And the older I got, especially like in this realm, there's a lot of things meetings we go into. People don't mean well. Um, Interactions we have, people are looking for either to trade. Well, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? But then you run across genuine, sincere, authentic people and
Sure.
attempts.
Yeah.
And those, when I tell you, make the difference. I've started to compare to anybody who's heard me speak. I go into, it's funny how we forget the fundamentals of X-ray. So what do you mean? I say the production of X-ray is 99% heat dissipation. So most of the things we deal with are going to be BS, but it's that 1% that has always made the diagnostic, therapeutic, or interventional difference.
That is
So
fact.
it is quality over quantity, and so
Yeah.
understanding uh, that sometimes we are going to feel like we're dealing in more um, madness than not, but we're going to come out on the other end, and sometimes it starts with the choice and being resilient and refusing to lose and refusing to be ignored and knowing that it matters most in community. And I think over my time serving and being here, the 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 experiences I've had from others to walk in the room and either ignite or remind has made me feel like I've been working. Um, I don't. Most of my plaques are in a box. There are very few things that I don't think I have anything hung up, and it's not because I don't appreciate them or
Sure.
they don't matter, but like it's time to work. Like those some of those things may very well end up in antique shops. Nobody knew what to do with them. But it's really the work that we do, and I think as a profession, and say, and I always say organized profession at 105, we're a lot younger than other professions. And
Yeah.
I think people where it doesn't matter because when I'm calculating the profession is by my lifetime, and that's what a lot of people are. Well, in my career, my time, I think it's coming, and I think we're building it. I think what we're seeing now is we went through the strong legacy of Dr. Sal Martino, who really made us durable as an organization, and now you're seeing the legacy being built of Dr. Melissa Pergola, who
Huh?
you're going to see it be more externally facing. You're going to see it be more provocative, and I mean in a very positive way. Like, um, and I hope that boards and elected, appointed officials to come understand that today's work is about tomorrow. Very
That is
intentionally.
definitely a fact.
Very intentionally, and some
Hmm.
people will argue. It's always been that way, and it's like, I'd love to sit and have a conversation. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that,
No. Hmm.
um, but it's about really getting it done. Like I tell people all the time, half this work is not going to benefit my career. It's not, and I don't mean that to downplay it, but saying it has there has to be something driving you more than that, because other than that, the time you invest in it's not going to be worth it. It's not going to be worth it. What does the profession look like in 30 years? And some people are like, oh, it makes it scary, and it's not. It's just, do we want somebody to dictate to us what that is,
Hmm.
or we want to build it? And if we're not able to build it, it's not because we didn't fight to build it. So I'm okay
Right.
with losing. I'm not okay with not showing up to the fight.
Right.
But when we show up to the fight, like, you see things happen, like what happened with the OMB petition. Like, that was, people don't realize that was like,
Talk about that a moment, Brandon,
I will.
because so our listeners, I have it on my
Okay.
list to
Okay.
talk about. So talk
So,
about that for a few minutes, if you will.
so I know I soapbox, I start rambling. So OMB. So through the Department of Labor and Statistics, you have what you call the Office of Management and Budget. Through that particular office is where you have classification, different breakdowns
Mm-hmm.
with professional classifications. Um, there are three things you need to be considered professional. You need to make, and my number may be off because I haven't
So
looked at it
I'm
in a
gonna
while.
stop for 1 second.
Okay.
So for our listeners that don't, maybe you haven't been a technologist a long time, or you don't understand what we're talking about being classified as a professional. Nurses and physicians are officially classified as professionals through this Bureau of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Office of Management Budget petition. So what Brandon is talking about, technologists or not, and therapists. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
So therapists are classified. So
As
radiation therapists
professionals.
are
That's right.
classified as
Sorry.
professionals.
Yeah.
And so, but you have certain modalities and instances where we're not as a whole. So let's say as a profession that we're not. And so the OMB, and for terms, so I won't blast y'all with the whole term every time. The OMB opens up um, has a cycle every so often, so many
Mm-hmm.
years that they are open for public comment. So what I want you all to understand, what you showing up looks like in a 4-day period: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days, a 5-day period. We realized that was going on. Big push. You see a lot of organizations. Um, the ART did a great job as well as pushing it out. We got almost about 50,000, like, so a
That's
little under
wonderful.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
in between four, and that's just with through the ASRT. That's not talking about everybody else who's doing anything as well to push for professional status. And I know there's rumors, oh, we get professional status, we don't get overtime. That's not true. There are certain special classifications that other professionals fall under as well, just like nursing. That doesn't go away. You do become an exempt employee, but there are parameters, there are fair labor law practices and things of that nature. But happy that we could talk about that for hours. But the point of addressing that is,
Mm-hmm.
in a 4 or 5 day period, there's a 50,000 um, person effort,
And
and that's
that
important.
that was a letter
That
from
was a
that
letter
many people.
for letting
Each
people.
person wrote a letter.
Same thing when we see, when you watching the Olympics and you see a commercial come on about the things that you do to represent the modalities, and even with, and to mind you, to be clear about that, that's the Be Seen commercial, not the
Mm-hmm.
Be Seen campaign.
Right.
The Be Seen commercial is a component of a much larger plan that will go for about the next decade.
That's wonderful. Talk about that
And
for a moment, if you will.
that was about being more externally facing. It's really important. We all agreed as a group, or as a board, you know what what are we doing here? And we have all become, as a profession, we've become professional choir practice experts, where we sing to the choir, But when we're going to put on a concert, like if the ship is truly sinking, can we say we lost because we put up a good fight, or we lost because we didn't show up? Because I guarantee you, every issue that we talk about, whether it's encroachment, whether it's being discounted, regardless of what it is, those are not issues, those are symptoms. The disease is being disengaged, being absent, and living in a cage that's not even locked.
Why do you think, what is your take on it, Brandon, as to why, as a whole, technologists are like that, as a whole, not everybody,
Hmm.
versus nursing as a profession? Because they are very
They,
united.
so I'll say one. I'll give they are much older in the game than we
Okay.
are. So
Yep.
it's and then I know sometimes we compare apples to oranges. That's one.
That is that for sure.
Two, two. We have to realize at some point they locked horns with physicians.
They
And then
surely
and
did.
so and that's even before we talk about centuries back. Like, but when everybody has these positions in healthcare and this hierarchy is set, the foundation is settling, and so you they understand what they bring to the table and the autonomy in their practice. I'm not arguing liability. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
arguing hierarchy. The
No.
doctor has we I believe in a radiologist led team. I believe in physician led healthcare. That's why
Mm-hmm.
doctors become doctors.
Sure.
But we all have a part to play, and we have to understand that there's times where your expertise is not an argument, but you have to speak up and really be delivering patient care about what was ordered or asked is inappropriate for the patient that you are managing at the time. I don't think we have been empowered in an organized way. I think that's the key. I think we
What's it going to
have
take to make that happen?
choosing, making it, but I think from the bottom up and from the top down, the same way. Like they have to see that your national gladiators on whatever platform that is, you know, it's making prudent decisions, but then we have to understand what that looks like too. So from national on down, so I'm just going to say national organization. It doesn't matter whether it's your credentialing agency, whether it's your professional organization, what have you. If you if you are in a situation or if change has to be made, you can't change national international standards Monday to Tuesday. I usually crack the joke unless it's shielding it because that went away overnight. That's a joke, but that was
Oh,
but
let
that
us
was
not go down that road today.
right. But we have to understand that there's a process. For example, with the OMB, a lot of the feedback we got from the OMB is, well, why don't we change it to why is it not changing tomorrow? I said, okay, let's talk about this. You've lived under the same classification for more, we're gonna say, than 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when you finally show up and start fighting bullies, or not, and I'm not calling, we're just gonna call the issue a bully, not an entity,
Yeah,
because I want to make sure state that correctly. When you start showing up, you don't become the Olympian overnight. And I understand you want that instant gratification, but understand how long it took us to build the valley and how you
sure.
expect us to flip this valley
Mm-hmm.
overnight and turn it into a mountain. Sometimes it's a long game. And so from the top down, that change, in order for it to stick, has to be prudent, has to be deliberate, and all factors have to be considered. And sometimes that comes with processes that are not as instantaneous
Sure.
as people want. Now, from the bottom up, there is no stronger gladiator than you. You at your facility, you with your state legislator. Why? Well, Renee, how could that be? They don't want to hear from a national president that doesn't work from their institution, that doesn't vote in their district, that isn't licensed through their licensure board.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear from a board chair or anybody in those realms who are not within that intimate level. The power starts from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And I don't think people get that because it's intimidating. Oh,
Yeah.
it's extremely intimidating. It's like, well, the first time I went to 333 Guadalupe in Austin, Texas, the building seems like it's cold.
Uh-huh.
It is just this marble, this history, and you're getting ready to go into a room and you're getting ready to state your claim with these boards, be it the PA board, the nursing board, be it your own board, be it the overall Texas Medical Board, and it's intimidating.
Sure it is.
But what people have to start to think as we move forward is you're worthy, because we can't have one extreme to the other. We can't have, oh, I'm not, I'm that's not my job. I'm just a tech too. Oh, well, I'm really a surgeon in my mind. Okay, let's pull that back. let's let's pull that back. That's not what we're saying. Like, we're trying to find to where we are objective and enthusiastic in the way that we're attacking things that we've earned. And that's the thing that I need the people to understand. You're talking about you've lasted for more than a century.
Right.
You've been delivering patient care for more than a century. So I'm not guessing that, oh, maybe you create value, maybe you don't. But I'm saying think about where you fit. I'm not saying, oh, let's operate out of the scope of practice. No, 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 no. Understand your lane, but you can't stay in a lane that you can't define. That's one. So, what are your ASRT practice standards? What are your ART, your task inventory? What are the things that you were tested on in order to become credentialed? Then you go to your state. I'm telling you, reading bills and legislation is boring. I get it, but it's important. Do you have a state license? What does it say you can do? Do at your institution, what does it say that you can do? Because people don't realize your state and your institution don't set your practice. It limits it. It doesn't define it. I guess I'll say it sets it. It doesn't define it. It sets it. That's the difference.
Okay.
What defines it is ASRT practice standards, your ART, task inventory, and
Hmm.
scope. And the same thing, I would say the same thing to other national national credentialing bodies as they define what we have qualified you to do. So then the ASRT has defined these are best practices according to your role. So understanding those two. Now, why should you understand those if all you can do is practice the way the state and the institution allows? Because when you have to argue with the state or your institution about what's in your scope of practice, you need to know what that is because
Sure.
they said it, they don't define it.
Right.
Or maybe I should say they define it, they don't set it. That's semantics. I'm pretty sure somebody's gonna call me out on that. So I would argue that it is. No, I would say I think
I
I
would
would
say
stick with
set.
that. I would say
Yeah,
set too. I
I
would say
would too.
I had to think about that because somebody's like, oh, he said that wrong. Like I probably did. Like I'm human.
No, I'm
Um,
I'm on the same page with you as far as terminology, but yeah,
so
there may be somebody else come back and say something differently.
right,
But
and that's just Samantha. I hope nobody takes that to heart. It's just me being jovial. But at any rate, I'll even dare to say, because this gives a negative connotation, I was trying to limit that. The state and state license, if you have one, in your institution, limit your scope of practice. So they're not defining it. And if you don't know the definition, you can't argue with somebody that what's and whys. You can't
that
say,
is
well,
true.
I'm academically prepared and clinically competent to do X, Y, and Z. And then that's when we have to be we have to be more scientific. We have to be data driven.
Data
What
driven.
what does it look like, being a technologist? How do technologists add to quality? Because they will, I find that people are ready to appreciate the contributions of technology, but then limit
Whether those contributions coming from the technologist, the therapist, and so because people, well, the technology's changing. It always was. The
Always has
production,
been since
it's
day
always
one, since
been.
Marie Curie. So yeah,
And so,
since Rinkin,
but
technology has always been changing.
I would dare to ask our professionals, how are we running faster than the technology, or running in a way where regardless how rapid technology is changing, they still see the value? Are we learning it in a way? Cause, and this is one thing I love to crack this joke. I mean, not even a joke, because it's real, but people don't think of perspective. Well, I was on a call with another persona, with another healthcare persona. He said, "Well, you all do the technology part, and we do the patient care part." Time out. So
I've
let
been
me.
told that one.
So I said,
Yeah.
time out. So let me ask you
Mm,
this. I said,
mm.
so modern day hospitals, when you take a temperature, you're doing it manually. Well, no. Okay, you take a blood pressure, you're doing that manually. You have them hooked up to a monitor, or you go and check those vitals regularly. We're hooked up to a monitor. So is the monitor technology? Your Pyxis, is
Yeah.
that technology?
Hmm.
Your charting, is that
Charting. Are
technology?
you on paper?
And
Are
so
you
it,
MR?
and
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
so it's like, well, I mean, it's technology. So you use technology, but you deliver direct patient care. I use technology, but I don't.
I like that
And so it's like
reference
I didn't think
very
about
much.
that.
I'm gonna put that one in my file because I'm gonna be
Yeah.
using that one there.
And that's without trying to get into this tit for tat
Sure.
fight. And
Sure.
just bringing what we are. We have to lean more into, if we're the eyes of healthcare, people have said, and we manifest images so people can see, why can't we manifest our own image? One. Two, if we take a series of images to show perspective, why are we not articulating the perspective of us to people in a way that they can capture it? If we're doing a two view, a three view, a four view, a five view, don't get exhausted by having to over explain. Your whole job is showing people perspectives, changing the angle. And so this is what we have to do moving forward. Don't be tired of doing the same thing and getting the same result. Don't be tired in doing something new and having to wait, for it to, because the change is happening. I see it. Like, I see it at this level. I
I have
see
seen
it.
it too. I have. Oh my gosh.
Um, but we just got to be in it, and you cannot be so. You have to be some degree of selfish, because you got to want something for yourself before you want something for somebody else. But it can't be so selfish that you're looking only to see what you're going to gain, because if not, it's going to be too expensive. Like, this fight
Mhm.
is going to be too expensive for you. It's going to take too much time, too much effort. I dare even say too much money. I don't know what that looks like. But now is the time. And so that's where a lot of things matter. Well, how do I make a difference as an individual? You don't have to. And no, I know the societies and organizations are gonna kick at me for saying this. You don't have to be a member to be involved, but it's the most logical and effective avenue to be involved. You're gonna meet people that will change your life, and you're gonna meet people that are delightful that you could really do without. Like, that's just life. You got those people in your family, but
Sure.
stop being deterred by such silly things, when life is so much bigger. But being involved matters. You want to know this information? There's a lot of things I can discuss right now that, you had no idea is going on, because it's so much,
Sure.
it's so much to discuss. And so, but going to websites, navigating through, and then sometimes I'll tell a personal story. Um, Sometimes somebody's not going to answer the door the first time. And so one big thing that's really important to me is, I mean, you're the person who put me in contact with the state of Texas. I remember that. I talk about that all the time. I was emailing. Oh my God. And
Oh
so,
my goodness.
right,
We're going back a little ways, aren't
we
we?
are. I was emailing. I'm fresh into the field. I'm excited. I want to be involved. Can't get an email back. Cannot get an email back. And so,
That's so frustrating. I know it is.
but it is, and it isn't. And I think sometimes people think when you're functioning at this level, it never happened to you, and that's just not. And I want
It
to be
happens to
blunt with
all of
you.
us.
Correct.
It still
It's
does to me.
right.
Oh
And
Lord, it's that Melanie Hale again.
you just you
I'm persistent. I can take it.
and I think that's important. I
Yeah,
think that's really important. You can't have somebody keep you out your own house.
that's right.
And so, you know, what I'm asking people to do, get frustrated, but don't stay frustrated.
Yeah,
Be disappointed, but don't live in it.
yeah.
And if it's really causing you that much angst, be a part of the solution, not in a vindictive way against a person, but against a gap. Fight the gap. A lot of times we're fighting people. Fight the gap.
Fight the gap, bridge the
Right,
gap.
right. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying. And so, that's what we are today. Get involved in your state affiliate. You'll find that you'll meet people who, acquaintances become colleagues, colleagues become friends, friends become family, family become, these people become defining moments. And it,
Absolutely.
it really does make the difference in between your job and a career. And in any level, and you're gonna find things. People are gonna say things. People are gonna do things. I've heard narratives about me. I was places I wasn't even at, and I just laugh.
I was an educator. I've heard it all. That mean
Right,
old Miss Hale. I don't know how many times I've heard that term.
right.
I just like to let it roll off. Like, did you learn anything during your time with me? Well, yeah. I said, then my job is done here.
And as simple as that. And I take
Yeah,
it. And there's some things feedback I've heard that have made me more conscious. Um, quite frankly, people who really support me. There's some people who don't, for good
sure,
reason and for no reason at all.
sure.
But the work has to be the same.
Yeah,
And I think getting into your organization and seeing the value and knowing that the age old thing, CEs are a requirement of your practice. It is not it's not the focus of any organization. It's a benefit.
it's a
It's a
benefit.
benefit. It's
Hmm.
not a focus. And so, you have to tap into things that are available to you. Like, what does the ASRT white paper say? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? The Be Seen campaign, we started with a commercial about technologists. What's the next phase? Why are we being externally facing? This is why.
Hmm.
Are we being data driven? Are we just saying things, or is it motion behind it? We say we create value. Why? How are we expressing it in numbers that we can articulate? Um, are you voting in your elections? Texas is getting ready to have the elections for the TSRT. ASRT elections kick off February 11th through March the 4th. Are you
Yes.
asking these people? If you got questions for them, ask them. That's what I tell somebody. Somebody, it's funny how this person doesn't feel embarrassed, so I'm going to keep it nameless. I got a text that a person, had some questions, uh, and so I said, well, have the person call me. And so the person was really amazed. Like, you let people call you? I work for y'all.
Hmm.
Like, yes, now I'm not going to let you just handle me sideways. I'm going to be honest with you. But I'm going to respect you, and I'm okay with different opinions. I guess something that didn't discuss, it wasn't the just of us talking, but I'll address it. For the first time, I believe, um, a very unique circumstance in history is where we had a senior board member resign.
Yes.
And so, which caused a space in our president elect position. Anybody that knows, a president elect becomes president
Hmm.
the year after. And so, by the time the president elect is elected, the replacement is reelected. They will have 3 months before they become president.
Hmm.
Do you have a ballot for this special election of 6 people? Myself, uh,
Sean.
three of the past presidents.
Uh huh.
So, uh, Mr. Danny Gonzalez,
Hmm.
Mrs. Julie Gill,
Hmm.
Mr. Michael Latimer, and then two uh, previous board members, Dr. Sean Caldwell and Mr. Joseph Whitten. Now, in order to qualify to run for the special election, you have had to have served on the board because of the position. So it's just not anyone can serve. You would have to have served on the board. Um,
I would tell you all to, read profiles, attend to the communities. A lot of that stuff is being discussed. I think there's different opinions.
Mhm.
What's and whys is definitely a scenario many haven't seen in their careers or their lifetime. Um, it's not a good or bad thing. They're just decisions to be made.
Mhm. It's just a unique time,
It's a unique time.
and it's very important that we all cast our vote.
Hmm.
And if you do have questions, as Brandon said, reach out to these candidates. If there is something in particular you have a concern about or you're passionate about, get some feedback.
And then outside of a special election, look at your regular election. Like, well, so what a lot of people don't realize, less
Hmm.
than 2%, about anywhere from, I'm gonna say less than three. I'm gonna be generous. Less than 3% of the voting body votes.
Of all the ASRT membership, less than 3% vote. What would that look like if that were for our local congressman or, special state representative or our national? I mean, we,
Right.
we need to have our voices heard. It's very important.
And you need to know what people's intentions are and what that looks like.
Absolutely.
So in your regular election, you have where your president elect is going. She's unopposed. She's running. Excuse me. She's not your vice president, who's a candidate for your president elect, Mrs. Marissa Mangrum. She is running unopposed. She's a radiation therapist. Get to know her. Get to know what her plan is for you all as she becomes president. A person who's not under election is Dr. Heather Moore, who's your current serving president,
Hmm.
who will
Hmm.
become your board chair, which that is a
Hmm.
very busy position as well. You should know her and what her initiatives are. She's really been invested in the pipeline during her presidency, and she's intentionally planting seeds for the future. You have
Definitely.
vice president candidates. I think believe there are two vice presidential candidates. You want to check them out. You have, I think, 5 to 6 candidates for both secretary and treasurer.
Mhm.
Um, we serve on an 8-person board. So right now there's 7 because of the vacancy that it described. But your president elect, vice president, treasurer, secretary are elected annually. Your by the general body. Your Speaker of the House and Vice Speaker are elected annually by the House of Delegates. So if you are a serving delegate and when annual meeting convenes, that is up to 168 individuals, you would be able to vote for the Speaker or Vice Speaker. And then, of course, your last 2 remaining are you don't vote for them because they when you become president elect, you're in a 3-year succession.
Right.
President elect, president, and then chair.
Hmm.
You have myself, who's your current sitting chair,
Hmm.
and Dr. Heather Moore. But
Hmm.
there's a lot to discuss when we talk about leadership and how we're leading, and understand that leadership starts with your membership. It doesn't start with a position.
Right.
And I could have a whole session on that in itself, and I would hope that anybody who's appointed or elected is taking the initiative to be accessible. And I hope
Absolutely.
when you all choose to access, be it myself or anybody else, it really is in goodwill. It doesn't matter what your position is, whether you agree or disagree, but the conversation is intent to come to a better understanding bi-directionally.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate your time with me today and talking about things that we can all do as technologists, as we can in propelling our career forward as a group.
Hmm.
We're not just the tech. We're not just some little number sitting somewhere and lost in the mix. We need to be proud, but not obnoxious, but definitely, let our voice be heard,
Right.
and that this is something ongoing. Don't go 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. We need to keep moving it forward. I like your analogy of, don't beat the bushes down and just to let them grow back up. We need to put that road through and keep it moving. So
Most definitely. I appreciate you having me here. Hopefully, I talk a lot, so I know everybody.
we're talker. We're from Southeast Texas and
Uh,
grew up in the country. So yeah, we can do some
right.
talking.
And
Mhm.
but it's an important time, and
Sure.
from here to the time I'm inaudible, I hope to express that you all made a decision, whether it was uh, contingent or whatever. You're here, and your RT. There's value in it. There's value in you,
Absolutely.
and that value you create makes a difference in patient care. And now is our time to be more certain of that than we question it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate your time today. And guys, as mentioned, please go to the asrt.org website, check out your candidates, reach out with your questions. Be sure that you do cast your vote in the special election between February 11th and March 4th. Hey y'all, Melanie Hale here with Advanced Health Education Center in Houston, Texas. AHEC has been a leading provider of continuing education for healthcare professionals in the imaging sciences since 1988. Our mission is to provide you, the radiologic technologist, physician, sonographer, nurse, and allied health professional with evidence-based education and training that increases your knowledge, enhances your competency, and overall improves patient care. Technologists, has the time come to learn a new modality? Are you limited in your resources and, more importantly, time available to learn a new modality? AHEC is here to help. We have online and in-person delivery methods available for mammography, bone densitometry, sonography, CT, and MRI. AHEC also offers CME for physicians, including in-person ultrasound training. We have continuing education available via live webinar, on demand, at home study, and in person. We offer specialized corporate training classes both online and in person. Do you have a specific staff training need? We will come to you. Want to host a continuing education event for your staff and community? Hey, we do that too. Did you know AHEC also offers mammography consulting services? We provide on-site services to assist with regulatory inspection issues as well as accreditation reviews. Our consultants can design an acceptable compliance plan or a plan of action to correct deficiencies specific to your facility. Check us out at aheconline.com. Check us out wherever you social, like, follow, subscribe, and stay in touch with the many course offerings, events, and stackable learning courses we offer. Have a specific need? Give us a call at the office, 800-239-1361. Make the change from cheap continuing education to affordable, quality education that you can use. It's time to invest in yourself. My takeaways from today's guest, Brandon Smith, gosh, I had so many in my notes as we were talking, but I've narrowed it down. And Brandon had many good takeaways for all of us. Support fellow professionals. I want to start there. We know what it's like. I do. Many of you do. During National Rad Tech Week, what it's like for no one to even have a clue in the hospital or maybe your office or your imaging center or wherever it is that you're a technologist, they may or may not be aware that it is National Rad Tech Week and it's not celebrated, it's not talked about, and it is hurtful. And I've had the whole gamut of emotions during my years as a technologist, insulted. I can remember way back when that it was hardly talked about in my first full-time job. So someone said, well, why don't you do something about it? And I said, well, you know what, I am. Now, mind you, this was back in the 90s, and any of my previous coworkers from that special place on the Loop 610 in Houston, you remember this. I did take it on. I made a difference. We had a illuminated board out on the freeway. Well, I made sure it was out there the whole week the following year. I made sure that I checked with our vendors and different folks and the radiologists to, book out lunch and breakfast all week, and as well as the evening folks. So I took charge of that. And because I was so passionate about people recognizing National Rad Tech Week. Well, guys, it's important that we recognize all of our fellow professionals. Nurses Week, Physicians Week, Physical Therapists Week, um, Respiratory Therapist Week. It's important that all of our groups are celebrated and that you recognize them and say, happy whatever week, happy hospitalist week, whatever it is, because in this day and time, they are all on the calendar at some point in throughout the year. So celebrate your fellow professionals. Some of us, maybe not all of us, have been where it's not even mentioned the whole week, that first full week of November. So celebrate, support your fellow professionals. Okay. I've seen and probably shared some funny memes comparing one group to the Rad Techs, or two groups to the Rad Techs, and the steak dinner to the bologna moldy sandwich. But at the end of the day, it takes all of us, and we all need to recognize one another. It's very important. Ask yourself, okay, and I'm probably going to mention this in most of my episodes, guys. If you are not a member, and in the larger cities, with some areas still have a local radiology or imaging society, okay? Ask yourself why you're not a member of that, okay? If you are not, or a member of your state society. I think most states have a society now, and then maybe a national society. And I've talked to technologists over the years about this and saying, "Oh well, it costs $50 a year." Well, that's two trips to your coffee shop a week. In some cases, maybe we'll say less than 5 trips to your local coffee shop a week. And what happens with that money? It's not just about receiving continuing education. AHEC offers continuing education. We're not a society, but there are avenues of continuing education. If we're talking about a society, well, I'm not going to go there because yeah, it's this much and I'm only getting this much continuing education. Well, that is a byproduct of the membership. You're not becoming a member to get your continuing education. That money goes to a society, to a part of the little hierarchy from local to state to national society, and where they're all intertwined and supporting the profession. And so if you can just take a step and become a member of one of these this year, make it happen. Okay. Again, uh, lay off the coffee at the coffee shop for 2 weeks and have coffee at home, and that's money well spent. And as a byproduct, you will likely get some form of continuing education, whether it's a quarterly meeting or a quarterly webinar or whatever. You know, that's not the end goal, and it shouldn't be. It should be for advocacy. It should be for visibility of our profession and propelling that forward in a larger, stronger group. We are all stronger together. So whether it is a local society, your state society, or a national society, there are so many things that your $10 membership, your 25, your 50, your 125, whatever it is, that money goes toward. And so if you think about it in, the little our little guilty pleasures, where it's the coffee shop or whatever it is, that maybe just laying off that trip a couple times this month. Yeah, I'm going to do that and I'm going to become a member of this group. What that's going to do on a local level and a bigger level, and where those dollars go, very important. Um, One thing I'm going to close with, and Brandon mentioned this earlier on, is the shame language. And that term came to me recently in a session with my counselor. And so, but it's true. And I subconsciously do this. I may be talking about some, oh, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And it may not be something I really needed to apologize for. But we do that as technologists. I've seen technologists do it. I have probably done it as a technologist. And that comes from a place of shame, like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just the tech. No, you are the technologist. Sir, I don't have an answer for that, but let me do some checking and I'll get right back to you. Thank you for reaching out to me. You are the knowledgeable person about radiation safety exposure of everyone in the room. So, say you may not, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but don't shame your language and use those negative terms in how you talk about you or your team or whatever your job, like it doesn't matter, it's a menial task, because that is not the case. So this is something, self-reflection, we never get too old for that, is to put away that shame language. And oh, I'm sorry, I'm just the tech. Nope, don't say that. So you know what, I don't have an answer for that, but let me do some checking, I get that for you. It's just a matter of choosing those words wisely, confidently, not arrogantly, but confidently. Where, oh, okay, I'll wait, find out what you need to find out. But don't use the shame language, because again, we don't. You may be the representative that other professionals see, maybe you and one other person, and that's the language always used. So people are not going to recognize you. You're not going to stand out. And so it's very important that we are using confident, but not arrogant, not condescending, but confident, thoughtful language. And so being a part of the team, that's something that we can all strive to do better with. Guys, thanks for tuning in today. I want to thank John Largent, my producer with Largent Media. I want to thank Brandon for joining us today and talking about the importance of technologists and advocacy, and as he said, leaving things better than the way you found them. This is not, this isn't propelling our profession forward and being recognized as professionals. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But everything that each one of us does, whether it's writing a letter, whether it's talking to our elected officials, whatever that looks like, it all matters in the greater scheme of things and moving us forward. So thank you for your time today. Tune in next time, and peace, love, and rad, y'all. Be safe.